Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be picking up something that is extremely special. Since I already have the FD, I just thought it would be awesome to get an FC, and I've been looking around, and not too far from home I found one that was just sitting in somebody's backyard. I went over and talked to them, and they were extremely interested in selling it. I guess what happened was it ran when parked, and so now I guess it doesn't run. It's been sitting there for, I believe, 5 years. So we're going over, me and Ronnie's with me, Trevor's brother, and we're gonna see if we can get this thing on the trailer and get it to maybe run today. What do you think, Ronnie?
I think this is gonna be a good project for you, Dave.
Yeah. Decided to fill the truck up before we went and checked the FC out. She's almost empty, so it's gonna be like 125 bucks. Get into the people's house and we are pulling in the driveway. We're gonna see how this FC actually looks, and hopefully it's not too bad. So just got here, walking up on the FC, and it looks super weather. What do you think, Ronnie?
I mean, it's definitely had its time in the sun.
Yeah, so this is the FC, and she needs some work. She definitely, the paint's all cracking. It looks like it had some filler or something right there, and look at those. Those are like the original Ganadors. The original.
This is a Turbo II. Were all of them Turbo IIs?
No, so this is actually a decent one. It's Turbo II, so it's 5 lug, and it doesn't have the wing though, which is kind of. So most of them have the wing. It has this really shitty tint. We know somebody for tint though, right?
Yeah, we got a tent guy.
Yeah, we got a tint guy. He'll be pumped about this. And looks like the bumper back here, looks like they ran that into something. Looks like somebody got angry at the door. And let's try to, I don't know. I guess you gotta go through the passenger side to open the driver's side door. So here's the first look at the engine. What do you think, Ronnie? What do you think it's gonna look like?
Cobwebs.
Oh
not
man,
too bad.
Not bad. So it still has the top mount on it. It looks all original. It still even has the AC compressor. So I wonder how many miles do you think this thing has on it?
Oh, just looking at it, I would say 500,000, but
500,000.
See, so
These things don't run that long.
you know it doesn't have that many.
Yeah. Holy shit, 175.
Wow.
Man, I'm surprised this thing has that many miles on it.
This, it looks like a rabbit or something was living in here chewing on those wires.
Oh yeah, look what we got, little rabbit poops. And we got our oil adder. All rotaries need that, so you could add oil to these things. What else? Got the little turbo on this side, a little baby guy. So the guy said that this thing pretty much ran when parked, and it doesn't have a battery in it right now, and supposedly you try to start it, it doesn't start. So gonna try to get this thing on the trailer and get it home, see what's wrong with it. I think the first mod after I get it running though is throw the RPF 1s on it. These wheels and tires are pretty much done. He said he aired the tires up before we came, so I mean that's one plus. Hopefully this thing will roll. It's been sitting for quite some time in this spot next to all this stuff right here, and it doesn't look like it needs too much work. Probably needs a little bit, but I think the plan with this thing is to leave it, you know, just like this, to get it running and driving, and see where it goes from there. Hopefully it actually runs. And the exhaust is all rusted off of here on both sides. It looks like the tail light's busted.
It does have some nice patina though.
It does have a nice patina. 80s like rat rod.
Yeah, it took it, you know, almost 30 years to get it this way, so why change it?
Yeah, look at that. You couldn't paint this on there. So we try to push this thing, but it seems like the rear brakes are seized, probably from sitting so long. So what I'm gonna do is hook my truck up to it. There's a tow hook in the front, and try to give it like maybe a few rocks back and forth to get it to kind of let go of those rear calipers, or let the rotors free from the rear calipers, and try to get loaded on the trailer. Ronnie hooked up a strap from the FC to the trailer, and we're gonna try to get this thing to loosen up the brakes so it'll roll onto the trailer nicely. We'll see what happens, Ronnie.
Come look at this. there's like a film on this glass on the inside.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's like all the oil's out of
everything.
all the plastic.
Look at the VIN plate. It's like broken from the sun.
It's like, I don't know what that is. It's like,
oh, it's like, yeah, it's like thick.
It's like a nice thick film of something. It's like somebody was vaping in
It's
here.
like, it was like before vape.
Before vape. Got it.
Did she come free?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It was stuck, but it wasn't like stuck super bad.
We got the FC loaded on the trailer. The F350 is doing its job, pulling this car all the way back home, and we're gonna see exactly what's wrong with this thing. Once we get it home and off the trailer, hopefully she fires up. Rotaries usually have a huge problem with apex seals going bad, especially turbo ones, and especially, I don't think I've ever seen an FC or an FD with 175,000 miles on it. So I guess once we get this baby home, we'll see if she actually runs. So we're rolling back home with the FC, and once we get back, we're gonna unload this thing, probably go to lunch, and then hopefully get it started. Maybe take it for a test drive. I guess that's kind of being optimistic, but we'll see what happens. One major thing that has been bothering me when we're loading it on the trailer is the driver's side door handle. It doesn't work. It looks like it's just kind of disconnected. Maybe it came disconnected a while ago. This door is kind of garbage anyway, but it works for now. So I'm gonna try to get this thing bolted in so it actually opens the door once again. And then I will work on possibly getting this thing to start. When we were loading it, it did kind of smell like bad gas. This thing has sat for a long time, so I'll probably drain out the fuel. And the good thing about these older cars is they have a drain plug on the gas tank. That one is right there. Just got the door handle out, and it looks like what happened was the little plastic clip that clips in here that goes down to the door actuator, the lock actuator, just broke off after, you know, age and everything. So all I need to do is run by the junkyard, grab one of those, and then I should be able to get this door handle to work. Why it was pulling out, it looked like one of these bolts just fell out, or it was removed and then they just never took the handle out, or maybe they pulled it out and noticed that. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I'm gonna replace that so this outside handle finally works, and then I won't have to crawl in through the passenger side anymore to open the door. What I'm gonna do with this is get some vice grips on it, just kind of pry it out so it looks a little bit better than it does right now. Just pulled this out a little bit. It looks a little bit better. It's not, you know, I'm gonna get new doors eventually, but this is good enough for now. At least it's not pinching against the body, and I could get the door closed and open a lot easier. What I ended up doing was going to the junkyard, and there wasn't any of those clips for an FC, and the RX8s, the RX7s are different. All the Mazda clips are different. What I ended up doing was I knew Hondas had these metal ones, and they are the same thread pitch. They're metal. You don't have to worry about them deteriorating like these old, look at that, these old Mazda ones. So this one will never deteriorate. All I have to do is adjust it, And this is the little clip you have to get out of the Honda, you know, door latch as well. And then it's, you know, forever not gonna break like the old ones. And now I'm going to put this back together, and I shouldn't have an issue opening the door from the driver's side anymore. I also got one for the passenger side, so I don't have to worry about that going bad on the passenger side as well. So what I did was I used a Milwaukee battery to roll the window down. I pulled the window out, and it made it a lot easier access to get that new little clip in. And now that it is a metal clip, it works a lot better. It feels a lot more solid. It doesn't feel like it's gonna break like the other side. So I'm probably gonna do the passenger side just so I don't have any issues later on. Put the driver door back together. There are a lot of little trim pieces that are busted. This piece right here, the window switch, the button for the driver's side is not connected. It's like broken out. It's missing all the stuff. Got the FC nice and clean, and when I was washing it with the sponge, it was actually taking paint off, so the sponge was nice and red. The purple stuff you saw in the video was decon, and that is to get, you know, iron particles out of the paint, which there is bare metal and stuff, but it does work really well with brake dust. So it did get the wheels a lot cleaner than they were. And it did actually get the rest of the car a lot cleaner than it was. But I mean, the body is pretty rough, and there are a few spots. I am gonna need to get a new hood. I thought this hood would have been all right, but it looks like somebody took an axe to it right here. And then up here, it looks like the same thing. So at least it's in the door and panels that I can replace. So other than this thing sitting in the sun and, you know, weathering, it is a really straight shell, and you know, the axe stuff with the panels that need to be replaced isn't that big of a deal. This is a really good platform to work off of because the body is straight. It seems to be relatively rust free, and I haven't got it to start yet. What I'm going to work on next, now that it is washed on the outside, I will clean the inside in a little bit, but the fuel pump, the gas gauge shows that it's empty. It sounds like there's fuel in it, so I'm going to take the fuel pump out from the top and see exactly how much fuel there is, so I know how much there is I have to drain. There's probably a quarter tank of fuel still left in the fuel tank. And what usually happens with these fuel tanks when you leave gas in them and it turns bad is it pretty much just vaporizes in the heat and keeps doing that. And then it builds up this lacquer on the side of the tank. There's also moisture, which rusts the tank from the inside out. And it has a bunch of sediment on the bottom. I stuck the screwdriver in, so it probably had half a tank of fuel in it when it started. And now it is a quarter tank of fuel, but with a bunch of lacquer and stuff inside the tank and sediment. So what I'm gonna have to do, I thought I was gonna be able to just drain the tank, but I'm most likely going to have to drop the tank, clean it out, and make it like nice and clean inside again, because whatever I leave in the tank now is gonna come through the fuel lines, clog them up, clog the fuel filter up, and that won't work very well. Especially if I want to drive this thing around. The fuel pump over here, this is most likely cause why the car didn't start after they parked it. They probably let it sit for a couple of years and then this happened. The filter looks like it's pretty much clogged up with lacquer from the fuel. The fuel pump looks all rusty. So does the sending unit for the fuel gauge. I'm gonna call it a night working on the FC. It is getting pretty late. Tomorrow I'm gonna try to get the engine started. Before I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna put some oil in the rotor housings just so it doesn't start dry. Also, I'm gonna try to drop the fuel tank and get a new fuel pump in it and get that fuel tank all cleaned out before I put a new fuel pump in it. Obviously, with all that lacquer, it would just clog the new fuel pump and fuel filter up. Today, I'm gonna get this thing to try to start. Before I do that though, rotaries, they need premix. And this thing hasn't ran for so long. What I'm gonna do is pull the top plug on each rotor housing and put a bunch of Marvel mystery oil in there, so when it starts to turn, it has lubrication on the housings so I don't mess up the apex seals. Just finished cleaning the spark plugs up and putting some Marvel mystery oil in each rotor housing. When I did put Marvel mystery oil in the first rotor housing, you could hear the difference from the apex seals being dry to them actually having some lubrication, so I'm really glad that I did that. Now I'm gonna crank it, and I was actually pretty surprised that it cranked so smoothly when I tried to turn the key and everything. It didn't seem like it had any low compression sounds. I'm gonna crank it now and see how she sounds. The spark plugs are back in, they're cleaned up. Obviously there's no fuel pump in it, so I'm gonna have to use some starting fluid, but with how it sounds, I don't think it should have any issues with starting, other than maybe there might be some electrical stuff. The first actual crank with lubrication in the rotor housings. It sounds pretty good. What I'm gonna do now is pull this coupler off this charge pipe, spray some starting fluid in there, and see if she starts. I thought I had some starting fluid here. I guess I'm out, so I'm going to run to a parts store, grab some. I'm also out of brake cleaner, so I'm gonna grab a case of that as well. Just got back from the parts store. I got some fuel line, I got some starting fluid, I got some premix. This is what I use in my FD. That's the best stuff. Unless you're using E85, then you want some red line so it doesn't separate. And then I got a case of brake cleaner. So I'm gonna put premix in a 5-gallon jug of gas that I have, put a fuel pump in it, connect it to the fuel rail on the FC, and then see if it actually will start with fuel. without having to use the starting fluid. So we'll try that first. I just pre-mixed the fuel, so I mix half a quart of premix to 5 gallons. That's just how I always do it with my FD because it's higher horsepower. It doesn't hurt anything to have more mix in a rotary. The more you have, there's probably a point where there's too much, but half a quart is really safe. You don't have to worry about the, you know, it really helps your rotor housings out when you pre-mix like that. So what I'm gonna do is submerge the fuel pump in this. This is gonna be the new fuel tank for now, just to see if this thing will run. She started up on starting fluid, and I think that the injectors are not firing. So this was pumping fuel to the fuel rail, sounded good. It wouldn't start, so I sprayed some starting fluid in it, and I think what's going on here, and I've always had problems, this Viper alarm security system. It may be cutting fuel, and I'm gonna pull everything out of that, see what's going on there, and then connect everything as it was factory, and then see if she'll start without the alarm system on it. Just got the security system out, and I must say it was the most worthless security system I've ever seen. It must have just been an alarm. It wasn't connected to ignition or anything like that. So that is all the way removed and don't really need it anyway. I came over here and I'm glad there was an air filter in, because it looks like some mice or something tried to make its way into the engine, but it deterred it, which is awesome. So I'm gonna pull this filter out and see what's underneath it, which it should just be clean since they weren't able to get through it, which is awesome. And just keep working on this thing. Try to get to start without starting fluid. I pulled the intake manifold to check the wiring for the injectors, and then I found this. I believe that is the coolant that cools the throttle body, and it is pretty much rock hard. So I pulled the thermostat housing, and it doesn't look that great. So the thermostat housing looks like this. The thermostat is all clogged with a bunch of weird junk and goo and stuff. So I'm gonna pull the thermostat out, and this line back here was completely, it had like sand in it almost. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with this right now. So pull the thermostat out, and fortunately enough, there isn't a bunch of that goop inside the engine. As far as I can see, what I'm gonna do is fill this full of water and see what comes out this line right here. This is the line that went to the throttle body. And hopefully it isn't, you know, a bunch of crazy stuff, because this could have overheated and it could have, you know, shot O-rings. So that could be a big problem, and this thing might not run very well if that is an issue. So luckily enough, everything that came out of that line was nice green coolant. I was getting really worried because all that blockage and the stuff on the thermostat. Obviously the thermostat's bad. Ran by the parts store, got a thermostat and a gasket, so now I can put the thermostat housing back on. that concludes this episode of the FC. I am super stoked about the car, kind of worried about the engine. It does run on starting fluid, which is a relief, but it did have that weird, chunky stuff in the coolant, as well as I can't get it to run on the fuel injectors, fuel pump going through like a gas can. So that is kind of scaring me, but next time I will use a multimeter, see if there's power going to the injectors, see kind of electrically troubleshoot what is going on with the ECU and the injectors to see if I can get this thing to start. Also, I think I'm going to delete the EGR system. There's just a lot of vacuum lines going around, and I would have to replace all those vacuum lines to begin with because all of them are cracked or missing or chewed up from rodents. So if you like these videos, click that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Also, if you like this video, comment below. See you guys next time.